I woke up this morning with 2 different perfumes on my skin, and I can't look at myself in the mirror anymore. My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, in one of those houses that looks perfect from the outside. White fence, garden with roses, a golden retriever named Max. I've been married to David for 9 years. 9 years that, somewhere along the way, turned into a routine so suffocating that I forgot what it felt like to breathe deeply. David is a good man. Everyone says so. He works at a law firm downtown, comes home at 7 every night, kisses me on the forehead like you'd pet a dog, and asks what's for dinner. We haven't had a real conversation in at least 3 years. We haven't made love in almost 2. And when we do, it feels like he's checking off a task on his to-do list. He kisses me like it's an obligation, touches me like he's following an instruction manual he's already bored of reading. But I stayed. Because that's what you do, right? You stay. You try. You convince yourself that all marriages go through rough patches, that passion fades, that this is just adult life. I stayed because I didn't know there was any other way to live. Until I met Gabriel. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April when everything changed. I was at Barnes & Noble in South Park, looking for a book my book club had chosen. I was in the poetry section, which is funny because I never read poetry. I was reaching for a Mary Oliver collection when my hand touched someone else's. I looked up, and there he was. Dark eyes, messy hair, a smile that seemed to know secrets I'd never told anyone. "Great choice," he said, his voice like warm honey. "But if you really want to feel something, try this one." He handed me a Pablo Neruda book, and when our fingers touched again, I felt an electric current run through my entire body. I know it sounds cliché, like something from a romance novel, but I swear it happened exactly like that. We started talking. Just talking. About books, about life, about how strange it is that we spend so much time doing things we don't really want to do. His name was Gabriel. He was a literature professor at UNC Charlotte, divorced, no kids. He had this way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the world, like every word that came out of my mouth mattered. When was the last time David looked at me like that? I couldn't remember. Before you judge me, before you click away thinking you know how this story ends, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Like you're playing a role that someone else wrote for you and you've forgotten your real lines? That's how I felt, every single day, until Gabriel. We exchanged numbers. Just as friends, I told myself. Just someone to talk to about books. We started texting. Casual at first, recommendations, funny observations about life. Then deeper. He asked me questions no one had asked me in years. What did I dream about? What made me scared? What would I do if I could start over? And I found myself answering honestly, peeling back layers I didn't even know I had built up. If you're relating to this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and it helps me continue sharing these real, raw experiences. Click that subscribe button now. 3 weeks after we met, we had coffee together. Just coffee, at a small cafe in Plaza Midwood, far enough from my neighborhood that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I told David I was meeting Sarah, my book club friend. The lie came out so easily it scared me. We sat there for 3 hours, talking like old friends, like souls that had known each other in another lifetime. He told me about his divorce, how his ex-wife had said he was too intense, too emotional, too much. I told him about my marriage, about how I felt like I was drowning in beige walls and polite silences. "You deserve to be read like poetry, Emily," he said, looking directly into my eyes, not skimmed like a grocery list. I cried right there in the cafe. I couldn't help it, because he was right. David skimmed me. Every day, he skimmed past my needs, my desires, my existence. I had become wallpaper in my own home. That night when I got home, David was watching a basketball game on TV. "How was book club?" he asked, not looking away from the screen. "Good," I said. He nodded. That was it. That was our entire interaction. I went upstairs, took a shower, and cried under the hot water until my skin turned red. Gabriel and I kept meeting. Once a week became twice a week, became almost every day. Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into long walks in Freedom Park. We never touched beyond friendly hugs goodbye, but the tension between us was suffocating. Delicious and suffocating. I started dressing differently, wearing perfume again, actually caring about how I looked. David noticed. "You look nice," he said one morning, surprised. "Are you going somewhere?" "Just out with Sarah," I lied again. The lies were stacking up like bricks, building a wall between my two lives. I knew what was happening. I knew I was falling for Gabriel. And I knew it was wrong. I was married. I had made vows. But every time I was with him, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. He saw me, really saw me. He listened when I talked. He remembered small details I'd mentioned weeks before. He made me laugh. He made me think. He made me feel like I mattered. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday in late June. David was at a work conference in Atlanta, gone for 3 days. Gabriel invited me to his apartment to watch a foreign film he'd been wanting to show me. I knew I shouldn't go. I knew crossing that threshold would mean crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But I went anyway. His apartment was exactly what I'd imagined. Books everywhere, warm lighting, music playing softly in the background. We sat on his couch, watching the film, but I couldn't focus on the subtitles. I was hyper-aware of every inch of space between us, of how his arm was resting on the back of the couch behind me, of how easy it would be to lean into him. "Emily," he said softly, pausing the movie, "I need to tell you something." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. "I'm falling in love with you. I've been falling in love with you since that day in the bookstore. And I know you're married, and I know this is complicated, but I can't pretend anymore that this is just friendship." I should have left. I should have told him this was wrong, that I was married, that this couldn't happen. But instead, I kissed him. Or he kissed me. I don't even know who moved first. All I know is that his lips were on mine, and it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. He kissed me like I was a poem he was trying to memorize. Like every part of me was sacred and worth savoring. His hands were in my hair, on my face, gentle but urgent. We stumbled to his bedroom, and what happened there. I can't give you all the details, but I can tell you this. He made me feel worshipped. For the first time in years, maybe in my entire life, I felt completely present in my own body. It wasn't just physical, though God knows the physical part was incredible. It was emotional, spiritual even. I cried afterward, and he held me, stroking my hair, not asking questions, just being there. If this story is resonating with you, don't forget to subscribe. These real stories need to be heard, and your subscription helps us create more content. Hit that button and join our community. I left his apartment at 2 a.m, my body still humming with electricity, my mind spinning with guilt and confusion and a strange, unexpected joy. I drove home in a daze, and when I walked into my empty house, I looked around at my perfect life and felt like a stranger in it. I took another shower, trying to wash away the evidence, but Gabriel's scent lingered on my skin, in my hair, in my memory. I didn't want to wash it away. That was the worst part. I didn't want to erase what had happened. I wanted to go back and do it again. David came home from Atlanta on Saturday evening. He kissed me on the forehead, the same mechanical kiss he always gave me, and told me about his conference. I nodded and smiled and felt like I was watching myself from outside my body. That night, he wanted to have sex. It had been so long that I couldn't say no without raising suspicion. But lying there beneath him, feeling him move over me with the same tired rhythm he'd used for years. I had to bite my lip to keep from crying, because the contrast was unbearable. This wasn't making love. This was two strangers going through motions in the dark. When it was over, he rolled over and fell asleep immediately, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. I saw Gabriel 2 days later. We didn't plan it, but we couldn't stay away from each other. It happened again and again. We became experts at sneaking around, finding moments between David's work schedule and my supposed errands. The guilt was eating me alive, but so was the desire. I was living two completely separate lives, and both felt equally real and equally false. With David, I was the dutiful wife, the woman who cooked dinner and folded laundry and smiled at his colleagues at work functions. With Gabriel, I was someone else entirely, someone passionate and alive and desperate and free. This went on for months. Summer turned into fall, fall into winter. I thought I could keep both worlds separate forever. I thought I could have my stable life with David and my secret passion with Gabriel, and somehow it would all work out. But life doesn't work that way, does it? The universe has a way of forcing your hand. It was 2 weeks before Christmas when everything started to unravel. David came home early from work one day, which never happened. I was texting Gabriel, and I didn't hear him come in. He walked into the kitchen and saw me smiling at my phone in a way I never smiled at him. "Who are you texting?" he asked, and something in his voice made my blood run cold. "Sarah," I said automatically. "About Christmas shopping." He nodded slowly, but I could see suspicion creeping into his eyes for the first time in our entire marriage. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. These stories are real, raw, and they matter. Click subscribe now. David started paying attention. Actually paying attention. He noticed when I left the house. He asked more questions. He looked at my phone when I left it on the counter. I became paranoid, deleting messages immediately, making excuses for everything. The stress was killing me. I was losing weight, not sleeping, jumping at every sound. Gabriel noticed too. "You need to make a choice, Emily," he told me one afternoon in his apartment. "This is destroying you. You can't live like this forever." "I know," I whispered, but I didn't know. I didn't know how to choose. Leaving David meant blowing up my entire life. It meant divorce, splitting assets, telling my family, facing judgment from everyone who thought we were the perfect couple. It meant being the bad guy, the cheater, the woman who threw away a good marriage for passion. But staying with David meant giving up Gabriel, giving up feeling alive, going back to being invisible. I couldn't imagine either option. Then, 3 weeks ago, David found a receipt. It was from a hotel in Asheville where Gabriel and I had spent a weekend together. I'd told David I was at a yoga retreat with Sarah. The receipt had fallen out of my purse, and he'd found it while looking for his car keys. I came home from the grocery store, and he was sitting at the kitchen table with the receipt in his hand. His face was gray. "Who is he?" he asked, his voice completely flat. I could have lied. I'd gotten so good at lying. But I was so tired. So incredibly tired of carrying all these secrets. "His name is Gabriel," I said quietly. "I met him 6 months ago." The look on David's face broke something in me. It wasn't anger, it was pain. Raw, devastating pain. This man who I'd convinced myself didn't care about me anymore, who skimmed past me like I was nothing, was looking at me like I'd ripped his heart out of his chest. "How long?" he asked. 6 months. "Have you?" He couldn't finish the question. "Yes," I said. There was no point in lying anymore. He stood up, walked past me without another word, and went upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close. I stood in the kitchen shaking, waiting for him to come back down and yell, to rage, to throw things. But he didn't. He just stayed upstairs. When I finally went up an hour later, He was sitting on the edge of our bed, crying. I'd never seen him cry before, not once in 9 years. "Why?" he asked, looking up at me with red eyes. "What did I do wrong?" And that question destroyed me, because the truth was, he hadn't done anything dramatically wrong. He hadn't hit me, or abused me, or cheated on me. He just stopped seeing me, stopped trying, stopped caring about who I was beyond my role as his wife. But how do you explain that? How do you tell someone that their casual neglect pushed you into another man's arms? "You stopped loving me," I said finally. "You stopped treating me like I mattered." "That's not true," he said, but his voice was weak. "I've always loved you." "You loved having a wife," I said. "You didn't love me. You don't even know me anymore, David. When's the last time you asked me about my dreams, my fears? When's the last time you really looked at me?" He didn't have an answer. We sat there in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, he said, "I want you to leave. Go stay with your sister. I need time to think." I packed a bag and drove to my sister Jessica's house in Raleigh. She took one look at my face and knew. "Oh, Emily," she said, wrapping her arms around me. "What have you done?" This story isn't over yet. Subscribe to stay updated on what happens next. Your support keeps these real stories coming. Click that subscribe button. I've been at Jessica's for 3 weeks now. David has barely spoken to me. We've exchanged a few texts about logistics. But that's it. He hasn't filed for divorce yet, but I know it's coming. Meanwhile, Gabriel has been calling and texting constantly. He wants me to come stay with him. He wants us to start our life together. "You're free now," he said yesterday. "We can finally be together without hiding." But am I free? I don't feel free. I feel like I'm drowning in consequences. My mom called yesterday. David told her what happened. She was devastated, disappointed, couldn't understand how I could throw away my marriage. "David is a good man," she said, exactly like I knew she would. "How could you do this to him?" I tried to explain, but how do you make someone understand what it feels like to be slowly erased from your own life? How do you justify falling in love with someone else while you're married? The truth is, I don't know if I can justify it. I don't know if what I did was right or wrong anymore. All I know is that I felt dead inside my marriage, and Gabriel made me feel alive. But now David is the one who's dying inside, and I'm the one who killed him. And Gabriel, sweet Gabriel who read me like poetry, is waiting for me to choose him. But is it really choosing him if I'm running away from David rather than running towards something new? Here's what keeps me up at night. What if I'm not in love with Gabriel at all? What if I'm just in love with feeling wanted? What if 6 months from now, a year from now, Gabriel starts taking me for granted too? What if passion always fades, and I've destroyed my life for something that was never going to last anyway? Or what if David could change? What if this wake-up call is exactly what our marriage needed? What if he starts seeing me again, really seeing me, and we could rebuild something even stronger than before? But would I always wonder about Gabriel? Would I spend the rest of my life thinking about what we could have had? Last night, I stood in Jessica's guest room at 3 in the morning, and I realized something terrifying. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not the good wife. I'm not the passionate lover. I'm not anything except a woman who made a series of choices that led her here, to this awful in-between place where every option feels wrong. David texted me this morning. Just 2 words. "Come home." Not, "We need to talk," or "I forgive you." Just, "Come home." And I don't know what that means. I don't know if he wants to work things out, or if he wants closure, or if he just wants me there so he can yell at me properly. And Gabriel texted 5 minutes later, "I love you. Whatever you decide, I love you." If you want to know what choice I make, subscribe to the channel. This story is still unfolding, and I need your support. Please subscribe now. So here I am, sitting in my sister's guest room with two different futures stretching out in front of me, and I have no idea which one to choose. Do I go back to David and try to rebuild the marriage I broke? Do I start over with Gabriel and risk everything for passion? Or do I walk away from both of them and try to figure out who Emily really is when she's not defined by the men in her life? I woke up this morning with two different perfumes on my skin, metaphorically speaking. One smells like safety and routine and the life I've known for 9 years. The other smells like passion and risk and the unknown, and I'm standing at a crossroads, paralyzed, because I know that whatever I choose, someone gets hurt. Maybe everyone gets hurt. Maybe I've already hurt everyone too much to ever make this right. The thing nobody tells you about affairs is that they don't end cleanly. There's no villain and hero. There's just people making messy choices and dealing with messy consequences. David wasn't a bad husband. He was just an absent one. Gabriel isn't a homewrecker. He's just a man who fell in love with an unhappy woman. And I'm not a monster. I'm just someone who forgot how to breathe and grabbed onto the first source of oxygen I could find. But that doesn't make it right. It doesn't erase the pain I've caused. It doesn't fix the lives I've disrupted. And it doesn't tell me what to do next. So I'm asking you, because I genuinely don't know anymore, what would you do in my place? If you were living two lives, loving two men in completely different ways, knowing that choosing one means destroying the other, what would you choose? Would you go back to safety, even if it felt like suffocation? Would you run toward passion, even if it might burn out? Or would you walk away from both and start completely over? Please subscribe to the channel and leave your answer in the comments. I need to hear from you. What would you do in my place? Your perspective might help me figure out my own. Subscribe now and let me know. I have to make a decision by this weekend. David wants an answer. Gabriel deserves an answer. And I need to figure out if I'm brave enough to choose what I really want, or if I'm going to let fear and guilt make this decision for me. Whatever happens next, I'll update you. But right now, in this moment, I'm just a woman with two different perfumes on her skin, trying to figure out which scent is really hers, and wondering if maybe she needs to find a completely different fragrance altogether. What would you do? End of script. Total word count, 3047 words.